Do you have a sore back? Now, before you answer that question, have a think. What do snakes and weak glutes have in common? Before you surmise that our favourite slithery ectothermic amniote vertebrae have nothing in common with our booties, think again. How about Cobra Pose or Bridge Pose? Hi, I'm Kamina Sue, and in this video I'm going to answer, can yoga help with back pain, and some simple poses that you can try. So yoga can definitely help with back pain, especially if you incorporate some core strengthening exercises alongside of yoga, because we want to maintain our what's called torso stiffness. And the ability to actually create a really stiff torso means that we actually have a more stable core, so then we can start to safely move our spine in different ranges of motion without anything getting tweaked. So the first exercise that I like to do to create a stable core is the very simple elbow plank. So here we're going to go ahead and come onto the hands and knees, and then bringing the elbows to the floor. And I like to make fists, or if you're new to these, you can go ahead and just clasp your hands. Then go ahead and extend through one leg and then the other. Just going forward a little bit with my elbows so I can drop my hips. Now, a very important thing here is to make sure that we are not sinking down into the lower back. This is very, very common, okay? So there's just nothing going on with the core. Making sure that you're keeping your hips lifted and doing what's called a posterior pelvic tilt. Well, notice I'm squeezing my pelvis forward like that. And by squeezing the pelvis forward, you also then want to go ahead and press through your elbows to extend the spine while keeping this gentle pressing of the hips towards the mat. So think about you're tucking your tailbone underneath you in a way. And you want to also push it through the heels, squeeze the quads. That's a very important cue to activate the core as well. And being here for about 10 to 30 seconds. Now, often you actually see people being in plank pose for ungodly amounts of time, when you start getting tired and things start sinking down and all that kind of stuff. So you want to make your efforts as effective as possible. So you want to train that torso stiffness. Even just doing a really strong elbow plank for about 10 seconds will be so much more beneficial than holding one for, say, 5 minutes. So once you're comfortable with being on your elbows for the plank position, you then want to think about moving into a plank position on your hands. So here, you're going to place the hands shoulder distance apart, no wider, and not too narrow. And really making sure that you are doing what I call cambering the fingers, so spreading the fingers as much as possible. And then you're pressing your finger pads into the floor. So by doing that, you actually really have so much more strength and control in your upper body. So once you've got that sorted out, you then want to go ahead and bring one leg back. I like to squeeze the quad of that extended leg, and then bring the other leg to move next to it. And then feet are roughly hip distance apart. Don't have the feet too wide and don't have them too narrow. Okay, so roughly hip distance apart feels right. Push the floor away, and once again using your posterior pelvic tilt by squeezing the pelvis forward and then getting in touch with your shoulder blades. So by getting in touch with your shoulder blades, it helps to extend your upper back, so you don't have an overly rounded upper back. You want to make the spine as long and straight as you can. Lift the navel up into the spine and breathe here. Now, as for your head, I see a lot of this going on when people are holding plank pose. Instead, keep your gaze roughly about a foot in front of you, so the back of your neck is long, and breathing here in plank position. I'd be here for about, once again, 10 to 30 seconds. And see if you can keep pushing it through your heels and squeezing your quads to keep your core engaged. So we've been working the anterior core with our plank position. Now we're going to move into our lateral core with the side plank. So go ahead and come onto your side and bringing your elbow not too close into the body, not too far away, so just a comfortable distance. And then go ahead and straighten your legs, like so. Now, if you're really new to side plank and you don't think you'll be able to lift yourself up, you can actually just go ahead and get started with a very simple version where you have your knees bent, okay? Inhaling here, exhaling, press to your knees and your elbows and lifting here. So that's a really good place to start. So once you feel comfortable with that side plank variation with your knees bent, you can go ahead and straighten the legs. And the way to place yourself in alignment, because a lot of the time people often either stick their butts out and they have their elbow too far forward, is to make sure that your elbow is in line with the arches of your feet. So once you've got that correct alignment and you're kind of really on your side here, go ahead and spread your toes. Feel like you're pushing something, you're like the wall away, just in front of you there, and to the side of you with your feet. Taking inhalation here, making a strong fist with that bottom hand, making sure the elbow is underneath that shoulder, and that shoulder is not rolling forward, it's actually rolling back, keeping the chest open. Inhaling here, exhaling, press to the elbow and lift yourself off the ground. Feel like you can extend that top arm towards the sky, breathing here for about 10 to 30 seconds. The elbow side plank. This is a great way to build lateral core strength. So after you've done the elbow side plank, it's time now to progress that exercise by doing it on your hand. And so once again, much as we were doing from our front plank where we had our hands on the floor, you want to make sure that you're spreading your fingers as much as possible and you're pressing your finger pads into the floor, like so. You also want to be thinking about externally rotating the supporting arm. Don't do it so much. If you are really bendy and you tend to hyperextend, try not to go to the end range of motion, but try and feel that you've still got some control there by feeling that you can activate your bicep. And you can actually do that just very quickly by making a little bump there with your bicep and then externally rotating the arm and then pressing like you're pressing a wall away and pushing something away with that hand, and hopefully you should feel that bicep engaging. Okay, so that's a handy thing to do if you are a hyperextender, like you tend to bow out your arms. So, got your biceps firing, place the hand on the ground. Let's go ahead and come into the same alignment as we did before. The heel of the hand in line with the arch of the foot, and then just go ahead and lift yourself into the side plank, bringing the top leg to meet the bottom, and then once again doing a little bit of a posterior pelvic tilt here, so gently pressing those hips forward, drawing my tailbone down towards the heels, feeling your chest expanding and lifting, and being here in our side plank for about 10 to 20 seconds. Long, slow, deep breathing. This next core exercise I wanted to include because it's just such a wonderful exercise to develop that core stability, and this is called the dead bug. So here you want to come onto your back, and I find that this is a really helpful exercise just to be able to engage the front and back of the core together, and you can do that easily by pressing your back into the ground. So what you're going to do is you're coming onto your back, you've got to feel on the floor, you're pressing your ribcage into the floor, shoulders are away from the ears, you're getting in touch with your shoulder blades here. Inhaling, bringing all the limbs up towards the ceiling and making sure that we've got our knees over the hips. Exhaling, go ahead and bring the right leg forward and the arm forward and the left arm back. And you can straighten that leg and make sure it doesn't touch the floor, but you're kind of hovering above the floor and you're pushing it through both heels. And then breathing here, relaxing those shoulders. Now make sure that left arm isn't touching either, it's also hovering. And being here for about 10 to 30 seconds if you want to challenge yourself. And then after that amount of time, inhaling back up, pressing the ribcage back onto the floor, exhaling, extending the right arm back and the left leg forward. Once again, pushing up through those heels and being here for 10 to 30 seconds. The dead bug. And keeping that ribcage glued onto the floor at all times and breathing. Once you're ready, inhaling back up and repeating for reps. You can do perhaps 5 to 8 on each side just to get started, and making sure that you are keeping the quality of engagement. It doesn't really matter how long you hold it for. It's more important that you're actually really keeping your ribcage glued onto the ground and you are not shifting your hips or your ribcage from side to side in any way. So this is a really great anti-rotational core exercise, the dead bug. This next exercise builds on the dead bug, and this is where we are once again really upping the ante on training our torso to stay really stiff and not not be able to shift when we apply forces to it. This time with our body weight using our extended leg. So this one here is called a Windscreen Wiper, and I'm going to come down onto the floor. And this time I'm going to be in a bridge position. So here, making sure that I've got my shoulders nice and relaxed, I've got my lower back pressing to the ground, my feet are about hip distance apart, I'm spreading my toes as much as I can and grounding through the big toes as much as I can. I'm going to take an inhalation here, lifting my back off the ground. Exhaling, you can go ahead and take a hold of the outsides of your mat and see if you can pull the mat apart with your hands. By doing that, you should be feeling your upper back engaging here and also feeling the navel coming down in towards the spine. So it's almost like your body's primed and ready to stabilize. We're going to take an inhalation here. I like to squeeze I'm going to squeeze my left glute because I'm going to lift my right leg up like so and extend out through the heel, really engaging through the feet. So I'm going to stay here, inhaling here, and this is where I'm going to be applying the force of the leg, and now I'm going to stop my torso from moving. And this is actually taking quite a bit of effort here. I'm moving my leg out to the side, kind of in a windscreen wiping motion. I'm pressing through the left leg to keep that hip from sinking as I extend out, and then I'm going to come back on the exhalation. Steady here, keeping the pelvis as straight and stable as you can. Inhaling the leg out. Nice and steady. Exhaling, bringing my leg forward again. And so I'm going to do this, if you're new to these, I would start with maybe 3 of these, building up to 5. And just making sure that you're keeping the movement slow and controlled. Once you've done your desired number of reps, go ahead and have a little break. In life, you can press your lower back into the ground, get in touch with your breath, and repeating on the second side. So these are a very simple exercise, but deceptively very challenging. So you want to make sure, once again, you're keeping the correct form and not rushing through this exercise. Okay, so let's move into the yoga part of this video. And so one of my favorite exercises to do for lower back pain is something called Cobra Pose. So here, you're just going to go ahead and come onto your tummy, like so. And actually you can start off with a really simple modified version here. We just have your elbows right underneath your shoulders. I like to make little fists with my hands, just to kind of keep the muscles, the musculature in my arms engaged and keeping the chest lifted. So taking an inhalation here, exhaling, I'm going to subtly draw my elbows back towards my hips. And by doing that, I'm actually feeling like I'm creating a little bit of extension here in my lower back. So just providing a nice little bit of space here. And the nice thing is, as you become more practiced at this, you can actually adjust the amount of opening that you do in your lower back by how much you move your elbows back towards your hips. So you don't want to rush this process, you guys. Yoga is really all about developing awareness. So you want to take this really slow and tune into your breath. So you want to be breathing long, slow and deep here and feeling that lovely feeling of spaciousness in your lower back. I also like to tuck the chin to keep the back of the neck long and relaxing any areas of tension that you might have, such as in your face, your jaw, and breathing here. See if you can be here for about a minute in this, actually strictly speaking, I guess it is called Sphinx Pose, but it's like a nice regression of Cobra Pose. So once you've spent the amount of time that you like in Sphinx Pose, you can then go ahead and move into Cobra. So this is where we're going to be bringing the hands on either side of our chest, taking an inhalation, rolling the shoulders away from the ears, exhaling. Now, the temptation here is to press really aggressively with your hands to move into the shape of the pose. It's actually not the way to approach this pose at all. What you want to be thinking about instead is actually using the strength of the muscles in your back and your breath to lift the chest, and using the hands just simply to support the process, not as the driver of the process, but just to be there as support. And you would once again keep the back of the neck long, and breathe here. Long, slow, deep breathing in wonderful Bhujangasana, Cobra Pose. I'd be here for about 20 to 30 seconds. And then when you're satisfied, gently coming down and repeating another 2 or 3 times. So one of the main reasons why people have sore lower backs is often their glutes are not firing properly. And so we're going to be combining a little bit of a dynamic exercise with moving into a final yoga pose, bridge pose or Siddha Mandasana, and we're going to start off with some glute bridges. So I like to use a block in between the thighs for this. So here, let's go ahead and come onto your bag, placing the block between the knees and making sure that our feet are really engaged with the floor. So you want to spread your toes, you want to lift your arches. Taking an inhalation here, lifting up. Now with the block between the thighs, you're not going to be able to lift up as high as you could without the block. But I like to use a block because it helps to really engage the glutes super effectively. So here I'm actually reaching my fingertips towards the heels, and I'm going to take the outside of the mat again. I'm going to pull the mat apart with my hands. I'm going to take an inhalation, squeezing the block as I bring my sacrum towards the floor, but don't touch the floor. See if you can just hover your sacrum right above the floor. And then exhaling, coming up and squeezing the glutes as much as I can and repeating. Inhaling down, exhaling. So doing about 10 of these bridge poses, really feeling the glutes firing here. And by having the block in between the thighs, we are targeting the largest muscles in the glute muscle complex. This is the glute maximus, which is the biggest part of your bottom. It's the cheek of your butt. So we're getting that nice and strong with these glute bridges. With the breath, long, deep and full. And then once you've done your 10 or 15, depending on what you feel like, you can go ahead and come down, remove the block, that feels right, and then inhaling here, re-engaging through the feet, pulling the mat apart with your hands, exhaling, lifting up and coming onto the tips of the shoulders, and here we are moving into the bridge pose. So making sure that we are feeling like we are breathing through the entire rib cage, keeping grounded to those big toes, keeping the face and jaw nice and soft. And once you've been here for a couple of breaths, you can start to refine the pose a little bit. So here I like to think about moving my shins forward a little bit. So moving the shins forward is a very slight energetic action, and by doing that I can actually feel my lower back just lengthening just a little bit. And also my glutes are getting also burning a little bit here as well because of after doing those glute bridges. So once you're here for about 5 to 8 breaths, go ahead and gently press through the feet and slowly roll your spine down into the floor. And I like to knock my knees together and place my hands on my belly, closing the eyes and relaxing here for another 5 to 8 breaths and repeating another 2 to 3 times. That is wonderful bridge pose. So after we've been working our core, develop that stability, that stiffness in our torso, moved our spine and a couple of different back bends, we now want to think about opening our hamstrings. And the most beginner-friendly way to do that is something called the supine hamstring opener using a strap. So here I also like to have something underneath my head as well so I can just keep my shoulders relaxed. So you can use a blanket or a pillow, something like that. So now we're going to go ahead and lie on your back, and I like to have the edge of the thing that's supporting my head at the very base of my skull so I can feel my neck is nice and long. I'm going to go ahead and placing the strap in the instep of one leg on one foot, and then making sure that I'm pushing out through the heel of that top foot and also through the heel of the bottom foot as well. So I'm actually actively scissoring those legs apart. Now if you are very stiff, you might actually be out here and your leg is bent. That's totally fine. Just see if you can keep your shoulders relaxed and breathe here. And keep engaging through both heels of the feet. As you start to get a little bit more open with regular practice and also definitely with strengthening your core, you'll then start to develop a little bit more hamstring mobility and be able to straighten the legs a little bit more. So once you're here, I actually like to have my thumbs on so that they're almost like I'm riding a horse. So you've got your thumbs on the outside of a strap, and then you can go ahead and gently externally rotate your arm bones, and that helps to also relax the shoulders. I find it's helpful to close the eyes and be here for about 1 minute, and then switching sides. So after you've done your supine hamstring stretch, it's time to finish things off now with a supine twist. So go ahead and make your arms nice and wide. Inhaling, bring the feet off the ground. Exhaling, dropping the knees over to the right or the left, doesn't really matter. Just making sure that you are extending out to the opposite fingertips to where your knees have landed. And then if you like, you can also place a hand on the outside of the thigh, and then bring the head up towards the ceiling, gaze up towards the ceiling, or you can also look to the opposite shoulder if you want to also give your neck a little twist as well. And so you're going to be here for about 5 to 8 breaths before gently switching sides. So there you have it, my favorite yoga and core exercises that you can do to help with back pain. If you enjoyed this video and you got some value from it, please follow or subscribe to my channel and other properties. I really appreciate your support, and I will see you in the next video.